Bringing the vision into a mission. This is Global of Mission of Peace with the GoldFish Report. On October 12th, 2015, I am Radagast, joined by fellow GoldFish reporters, Louisa, our media outreach person.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Wanda from Down Under, Sanjay.
G'day all. Thanks for watching.
And with the right to know, we have Sherry.
Hello, thanks for joining.
And we have our European correspondent, Steve.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
And I haven't said this in a while, the big heart and the keen intellect of the voice of the dragon, the ambassador. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I don't know who would like to start to give a weekly update. Weekend, who would like to start?
Today we're going to start with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it just seems like this thing keeps coming back like a bad penny for some reason. And it looks like some people are pretending to go along with it, but really have an alternative agenda. And we have a few other things to talk about, what's going on in the Persian Gulf, and also a few things about the refugee crisis that just seems to have disappeared from the mainstream media. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to the ambassador.
Great. Yes, I would like to speak about what happened this weekend. Okay, this weekend had a scenario where we had a big asteroid coming our way, and it was called 666, quite interesting. And also that's supposed to bypass us, and by the grace of God, it did bypass us without any catastrophes, which is a very good thing. The other good thing is that we had the American Navy retreating and leaving the Persian Gulf. We have some stories that supposedly Russian airplanes was shut down by the Turkish. I pray and hope that the Turkish would not continue with this type of aggressive behavior, and that it was a mistake, but that it would never be repeated again. And on the other side, we had a terrorist attack happening in Turkey, killing over hundreds of people, demonstrating for peace. And I hope that the people behind that terrorist attack will be exposed, and that will come forward what type of people they are. Because now it's time to stand together and change this planet together, and forget and reconcile and open our hearts and love for all of these people. And I saw also some people from Christians that was executed by ISIS and coming more. And it's important for us now to do our foremost to wake up the religious movements and the groups to unify in fighting terrorism. We saw also that Russia and Saudi Arabia is coming to some form of conclusion, and I really hope that the conclusion would be peace. Russia has also today discovered and arrested some plots of doing terrorist attacks in Moscow, and we also have the terrorist attacks in China. So I think it's very important now that we will come together and remove this evil wickedness out of the Middle East, and that the people that really, truly worship the Creator could live in peace and prosperity. And that is my hope, okay? And also we had a big prayer in the Good Night meeting and with Red Dragon. And after the meeting, we finally saw the American Navy leaving the place, and I think this is a sign from God, and that we are heading in the right direction. We need peace, we don't need war. We need prosperity, we don't need lack. So it's very important for us to be unified and working for the better of humanity. I will address one question, or a few questions that people were sending in to me, and it was relation to Jesus, and they were saying that, is Jesus also known as the only Son of God to other extraterrestrial beings? And the problem with that statement is that most likely the person write me this question is never studied the Old Testament, because if you read the Old Testament, it stated that the sons of God were standing in front of God, and one of them was Satan.
Bang on their door and demand.
Which basically means that there's more children than Jesus that is called the children of God. So by doubt, by no question, I wouldn't be surprised if God has many children, not only one children, in all around the world. Okay, and that is just based on the Bible teaching. So I recommend the people that thinks that Jesus is his only son should study the Old Testament and come to a different conclusion. Okay, that is one thing. And then it was another question about the Cabal, and that question was why that they've been receiving the 70 years renewals from time to time, and I have asked myself that question many times myself. But the most important thing is that they didn't get that renewed for this era, so that's at least a good thing. Okay, and you know, fight for the good and fight for the best. We have some. What did you want to ask me about the Ark of the Covenant? Someone was wanting to ask me.
It was Steve.
Yes, it was me. I was interested in asking what you know about the Ark of the Covenant, because it's there's a lot of conjecture on the internet and in history. It would be very interesting if you would make some comments about that.
And what I know is that the Ark of the Covenant has been held by different keepers in different times. Most of the times when it was held by that particular nation, that nation was a world-leading nation, like Rome, like you know, France, like then Pax, you know, Britannia, and from there, after the Second World War, coming over to the United States, and then the United States had their years of glory, and now supposedly this ark is in China. That's why we're going to see a lot of things. International institutions are going to come to China in the future. That's what I know, and it can only go in the direction of left. So before it comes before it comes to the Holy Temple, it needs to go to Tibet, and it needs to come to Persia, and from Persia going back to Israel. And then it has done its 360-degree movement around the world.
Mr. Ambassador, what is this, the spiritual significance? It possesses a power, or it gives a special power to the country that holds it. Is that correct?
Yes, it gives a special power to the people that holds it. It's built up by a monotonic gold frequencies, and it can shake, and it can vibrate, it can even levitate, and the people around that one will be very much empowered and very much filled with force and power. That's why everyone is struggling to have control over the ark. And everywhere where it has been, they have raised an obelisks for that. It's a memory for that it has been there.
All right. Thank you very much.
There's actually some questions about who is the Cabal, and I know that maybe a lot of people who follow the GoldFish report know the answer to this, but we may have some new members with us, and we do appreciate people who people who are referred by other people to watch the GoldFish report. So maybe that might be a good time to explain really who the Cabal is and why we're referring to them.
The Cabal, it's our secret rulers. Okay? It is some bankers like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Stanleys, okay, the Wallenbergs, the Bilderberger Group, Illuminati, Jesuits. There's many different type of secret societies and Freemasonry. All of them is usually put under that banner of being Cabal members. Okay? And the Queen and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. And so when people who are listening to this say secret controllers, they really don't have much of an idea like what that means. So how did they get this power and control over the people and the nations?
They've been scheming around for a quite long time. And they've been the bankers for the kings and the royals in Europe for many, many, many years. And they've been their asset managers and running the banks and running their scheme with their interest-based banking system and debt-based banking system. And they've also done a lot of good things like creating the United States, Europe and building these countries up to what they are today is for the thanks of Cabal, but they have also in that process killed a lot of people and also injured a lot of people and made us into the goldfishes that we are today. Okay.
Another question is, how do they control us? Another question submitted.
Basically, they're controlling us basically by keeping us ignorant. They're controlling us through our media, and they're controlling us through our needs for certain things. They're basing it us on our own ambitions, our needs, our wishes, or what is making us strive. So they're using this thing for them, okay, to control you. Okay.
And I think a lot of people probably want to know why the family is kind of putting up with this. And I know you have a very good answer to this, but I think because people don't understand that the family doesn't, control the governance. So maybe you can explain that.
No, the thing is this way, that they have seen them as asset managers, and many of them consider them that they have done a good job with making Europe and making America and making, Hong Kong, making all these big cities and creating infrastructures and schools and things. So they did a lot of things too. So some people in the family consider them as very loyal servants. Until the day happened that SARS was released on some family members, and then suddenly they didn't like them too much anymore.
So it seems strange, though, that they would do such good and then do such, horrible things. It really seems to be like there's some sort of agenda here. Can you explain what is this end game then? Are they just trying to pacify us by throwing a few bones at us, every once in a while, or is there an end game, ultimate agenda that they have?
The ultimate agenda is to control us fully, and that we should be just their loyal slaves. And when we become too many, then they want to find ways to get rid of us by either wars or diseases. And so these people has been coming to a stage where they almost seem like gods, and that's why that power that they had overwhelmed them and made them do things that they shouldn't, and that's why they were not being renewed into a new era. Okay, that's why they are where they are today. That's why we are where we are today. And the only way we need to continue to fight their programming is to wage a war on ignorance, because they are the ones behind the ignorant masses.
Mr. Ambassador, would you agree that if the financial system is changed, that would take the power away from the Cabal?
Yes, it would, because their system is based on creating debt all the time, and generate debt and create debt. And if you do something that is opposite, then people will join that other system instead of that other system. And that would be the end day for them. Understand?
Sorry, what is the Dragon family's position on debt and the financial system as it stands?
They have a vision, okay, to actually eliminate using the debt system to eliminate the debt system. To basically trade off the debt and not generate more debt, or generate assets instead.
Excellent.
Can we move this now? I think, is anyone has any other questions? Did anybody read more questions? And if not, then we can move on to maybe the ambassador talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and what's going on with that. Does anyone have any other questions, comments? Sherry, did you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got some really great information that's just come out, and that's been in the works for an awful long time. I think we're all aware of the 0-point devices, the free energy that we've been sitting on for quite some time. We're all familiar with the name Tesla, and many of us have heard in the recent past a man by the name of Keshe, K-E-S-H-E, if you want to look it up. They have just announced that they're going to offer some free power to be disseminated to the world on October 16th, 2015. So in other words, a shoebox-size unit will power a house. This type of technology, which many of us understand has been suppressed for a long time, because utility companies, back when JP Morgan, et cetera, they can't line their pockets with our money unless we depend on them. Just like the ambassador said, there are people who want to be in power. But actually, the tides are shifting right now, which is awesome. And here we have, in just a few days from now, some energy devices that are going to be coming out. And they've done it in such a way that they're doing it without copyright, patent. There's nothing in the way. And the blueprints for these devices are going to be going global. So I just wanted to sort of share that great info on the changing of the tides here as we speak.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Sherry. What about Sanjay?
Yep. I had some people ask about the TPP because it's relevant in Australia at the moment and it's on the normal media. And there's a program on ABC, which is our local broadcasting channel here, The Drum. And they've got the title saying, "We've been sold out by the TPP sham." And they go, the Trans-Pacific Partnership isn't about trade. It's certainly not about free trade. It's about entering the interest of major corporation at the expense of ordinary citizens. And this is what the deal was, very secretive, and they wouldn't let any of us talk about it. And they've brought in a lot of stuff like I would love to know more about this sovereignty law, and they're talking about even half a millennia ago, before the birth of Christ. All these things are linked into how the powers have formed, and these corporations that own all the patents, and they set all the tariffs. So basically, by owning all the patents, you can't grow food unless you have permission from them to use their seeds. And then the farmers are struggling, and that means the food bowls reduce. So there's a lot of pain and suffering. And everyone keeps going, well, we're talking about the Pacific Rim and it's Trans-Pacific thing. But in the Pacific Rim, we have China and Russia. So how come those two countries were not invited to this thing? Or were they invited and decided not to do it because they could smell something funny? So these are just some of the questions that I've been getting. And in Australia, we've had, with a cigarette, we no longer say Rothmans or Palm or any of the brands. It actually is plain packaging, and it talks about cancer and stuff. And the cigarette company, took Australian government to court by moving its head office out of here into Hong Kong, and then sued it in Singapore. And there's court cases going on, which is like about $50 million of Australian dollars wasted that people didn't know about, but it's all come out in the news. The Western Australian news wrote down about it. So, the problem is the government's already signed this deal, and now this is all coming out.
Well, what's interesting, I think Berlin just had they're having a huge protest about 250,000 people who, clearly people are not on board with this. Radagast, I know you had some comments to make.
Well, one of the things I found interesting was, it's kind of been a little bit of an open secret that it seems like Turkey has been supporting ISIS. But I just read an article at the A Times, or the Asian Times, that Turkey sees ICE role in bombing. So Turkey is targeting Islamic State in investigations of a double suicide bombing in Ankara that killed up to 128 people, officials said on Sunday. So I just found that kind of interesting, that Turkey is making noises against ICE or ISIS, because it seems like they're trying to get some new PR going about them.
Well, I think, eventually we're going to be having the discussion about the corporatists. I think they called it corporatocracy, the Berliners over there. And, it's really, at some point, I think we've talked about this before, the Wizard of Oz here, okay? They're kind of like the wizard, and we're going to be pulling that curtain back over time. And, I think this all comes down to the whole control issue, where we don't realize this, that by virtue of our parents signing our birth certificate, we basically have abdicated our bodies in a sense. We became corporate entities. And as a result of doing that, we gave them full control and jurisdiction over us. And so these court systems are set up to control us under that type of contract, under the kind of corporate entity that we are all. We don't know that we are. They have these crazy rules, and they just, assume, they say that there's an assumption that you know this information, and that if you don't claim yourself to be a live human being by the time you're 7 years old, then you're a corporate entity, and they have control over you. And this all goes back all the way to the Vatican, which holds all of the birth certificates. So there's a lot of people, and many of the billionaires, all know this, and they've all done what they call a change in status, at least in the United States. And they have kind of removed themselves from this corporate entity status that we all are. This is really how brilliant they are. It is so convoluted. Trust me, I've done a lot of research on this, and it's very convoluted. It's very hard to understand how it's structured and also how to get out of it. And then for those who are doing it just to try to avoid paying taxes, because then you're not really under the jurisdiction of having to pay taxes, because people don't realize that that's also optional, that you don't need a license to drive on the road because we have the right to human, travel. And I don't remember the exact word that it was. I think I have it here, but
we can travel. We can travel.
Right. Let me see. There's a certain word for that. But the idea is that the really wealthy people in the world all have this, and they're not part of the rules. They're above the rules. And when you really understand, it's very convoluted and complicated, and it's something that a lot of people don't connect the dots to understand. So this is another way that the Cabal controls, and this is how we're stuck under this jurisdiction, and it goes down to the judiciary, it goes down through everything, the education. And it's sometimes too much for some people to really get their mind around, but we have to start getting our mind around it if we want to stop being enslaved by them. And I think that the ambassador probably knows a whole lot more about this, but I'm not sure if he wants to jump in at this point and talk about this Trans-Pacific partnership, but it's definitely not being welcomed by many people.
So Louise, just to check on that. So, in Australia, this is seen as a Big Brother America driving and pushing this and overwhelming the world to extend the monopoly power of the American corporations and maintain the tariffs and the quota of the U.S. farmers unable to compete in the free trade world. Because here in Australia and New Zealand and stuff, we don't get the right to, even negotiate the tariffs that the Americans have.
Yeah, Santos.
Steve, yeah.
I'm going to ask Steve in just 1 second, but just to comment on that, Santos, I think his name is Santos Bonacci. He is somebody who has been trying to inform people, and they keep arresting him because they can. They don't want the information getting out, basically. Steve, did you have a comment?
Yeah. I'd just like to thank Sanjay for bringing up the TPP. I think it's very, very important. First of all, because it's a very murky document anyway. I haven't read the whole thing, 29 chapters long. It's been in planning officially for more than 10 years. So obviously it smells to me of globalization, but globalization with the rules being played by read by only one country or one group. So thank you for bringing that up, Sanjay. But I'd be very happy to hear if the ambassador would have some comments on what exactly is the agenda behind, or what it actually means.
What I want to do is that maybe on Wednesday go very deeply into it.
Okay.
So we have a wider understanding of what it is in detail.
Okay.
That we do on Wednesday. And what I wanted to find out from you is that how is the refugee crisis going on down in Germany as we're speaking?
Okay. Well, I'm still here in Germany. It hasn't gone away. We've had it started, how can I describe it? Political ramifications have begun here. Bavaria, which is the first station where they all come from the Balkans through Austria, then arrive in Bavaria, is the first station. So it's bearing the brunt of the refugee crisis. They've talked about closing the borders. The Bavarians have talked about blocking the borders completely. There have been ugly comments made against Merkel, the Chancellor. It's gone backwards and forwards. So basically what we're seeing here in Germany is the beginnings of tensions, political tensions, and on the streets as well. I think people are just getting nervous. We just had a big vote in Vienna, in Austria, where the right-wing party, which is the Blues, they call them, have gained 5% in the area of Vienna, and they've basically made massive gains in the rest of Austria. So there's a move to the right. It's caused political ramifications. The humanitarian crisis hasn't gone away, of course. They've sealed some of the borders. They've made it more difficult. So I think it's only going to get worse. I can't see it escalating rapidly from this stage. The refugees are reaching England. They closed the Channel Tunnel for a while, I read. So it is causing problems across Europe politically.
What is the media reporting, Steve? I mean, your local media there, because we're getting nothing on mainstream media over here.
Well, I think it's in America. It's not affecting you guys as much. So I think it's they're moving it to other things. But obviously, where I am, it is still an issue, and it is being discussed because it's arrived at the political level, and also at the European level. That they've had a lot of reporting, especially last week, where there were how can I describe it? They had. It was debated in European Parliament, so they know that there's disgruntlement and that people are going to lose their political power. So politicians are getting nervous, and the people on the street are disgruntled because it's the cheap trick of the right wing where they say it's going to take away jobs and all your benefits are going to be taken away and the inequality that people feel here is that the refugees come, they get money for nothing per month, and unemployed people get a pittance. It's the old song. So it is being reported in the countries where it's relevant. So I think it's just in the English press overseas, it's getting less exposure.
Are you still seeing demonstrations there?
Yeah, well, where I am, there is a demonstration every single Monday night, but that's been going on for a year. That's nothing to do with the refugees, but they've increased numbers again because of the issue. So it is fanning the flames of discontent here in Europe.
It seems like Merkel is definitely getting some heat from all of this, and
well, it's good because she's towing a political agenda which is not in the interests of the people. Okay, Germany has benefited enormously from the wars and things. They've sold arms and things, so there are she has to dance to the tune of the oligarchy that stand behind her. So. But she is feeling the heat, and I'm very curious to see how the heat will develop under her seat.
Right, and what about the people who have been losing their homes? I mean, is there any improvement? Have they come up with any solutions for people who? It's amazing that they're being evicted from their own apartments.
Yes, it's a disgusting thing, and look, it's hard to understand. I mean, it's basically pissing a lot of people off here. I had a few conversations with some locals the other day, and you can understand it. You just can't. And there've been fires lit in some of the places, in some of the Bundesländer, the states that they've been putting them up in like old gymnasiums and schools and things. Arson has been the reaction, but the down to stop them coming in. So we're getting ugly reactions. How far it will go, we have yet to see. But it's being reported, but it's not. They're trying to prevent. They're keeping it suppressed. They're just reporting enough in the media in order not to get people onto the street. So they're basically just feeding people information. That's what they're doing.
That's a little scary because do you think that, and anybody can certainly jump in, but do you think that something more sinister could be going on because they're not showing it on the media? Do you think there's like some sort of and I hate to say it, but I'm not implying that, I'm not saying by any means that I know this for a fact, but is there any kind of let's just say organized housing, so to speak, like, what would look like a concentration camp to us or something like that, or some sort of encampment or something? Is there something like organized where they're actually like, kind of holding these people where they can't really leave? Because that's really not what we want to see. And I think that's why we're not seeing it, because we want to know really what are they doing.
That's a good point, Louisa. As we've seen in Australia with the refugee crisis there over the last years, a lot happened behind closed doors. A lot was government policy of abusing refugees in order to scare the ones off from coming over from Indonesia. I suspect, I mean, I have no proof, I suspect that, of course, we are not getting the ugliest truth as to what happens. I know for a fact from the little bits of information that come through from the Balkans that it is very ugly down there, what's happening on the borders. And we're only getting a small sliver of the information. So you can imagine that it's 10 times worse than what we're actually getting. What happens here, look, Germany is a civilized country. They're upholding their responsibility to political refugees, not economic ones, but political ones. So I'm fairly certain that the majority of people are doing the right thing here. And, you know, basically the population is welcoming and people who are in genuine need. So that's not the issue, but you are right. We don't know the real truth, and it may come out later.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And I also wanted to just kind of go back to the subject we were just talking about at the very beginning. Putin is really showing who's a true leader and what it takes to be a leader, in fact. And I think I'm not really quite sure what's going on with Turkey, with this incident with the jets that were flying into Turkish airspace. And it seems like they had locked on to some of the Turkish planes. And, you know, that's really kind of, you know, only intended for one purpose, you know, and I don't know if there was they were playing chicken, you know, or because that's a pretty dangerous game to play. They're not really quite sure what that was about, but Putin seems so serious about, and he is, and he should be, about, you know, taking care of this ISIS issue. And because what happened was the Russian jets went into some Turkish airspace, and they said it was by accident the first 2 times, and then the third time it wasn't so, you know, clearly by accident. And but it does look like, you know, things in the at least in the Persian Gulf are moving. The United States is the Navy is pulling out over there. So, you know, these are good developments because, you know, what do you think this says, Radagast? Do you think that this is just saying that the United States is retreating for now, or what how do you look at that?
Well, to address that, I read a little bit about the one where the supposed Russian jet locked on to the Turkish jets. But during the report, they mentioned that it was a MiG-29. And that's kind of, for people who know what jets are going on over there, MiG-29 is part of the Syrian Air Force. The Russians are flying Su-24s and 25s and also the 30s and the 34s. So a MiG-29 is a Syrian Air Force. So again, I guess the Syrian Air Force is now feeling a little emboldened, and it just, I mean, again, a lock on doesn't mean I'm going to shoot you. It means I can shoot you. So yeah, there's a little chicken in that. But again, it was reported as a Russian jet. And again, yeah, it was a Russian made jet, but I'm pretty sure it was a Syrian flown jet. And so that, you know, those are the nuances that kind of make a little difference in this reporting. And again, they said they did identify it as a MiG-29, and that's a Syrian Air Force jet.
Well, that's good because it looks like, you know, Putin is really helping the Syrians empower themselves, you know, and not look so helpless in really trying to fight this, fight off the ISIS militants there. So that's good. It's really good. And, you know,
that's his stated intention. I mean, that's what he said. You know, I mean, obviously the Syrians are fighting, you know, by proxy. They're fighting much of the world. They're fighting some of the Gulf nations, plus Turkey, plus the support of the UK and the US. So they're really up against it. So really, the Russians are lending them a hand. They really want Syria to win this battle. So they're lending support. The Russians do not want to declare victory. It's not their victory to declare. You know, it's a good PR victory.
Well, Putin has said many times that he has no, you know, imperialist ambitions. You know, he's not looking to, you know, invade other countries to achieve world domination. I mean, he has said it many times, and he just seems, the reason why we're talking about this on the GoldFish Report is just that we want peace, and we do care about what's going on over there. And, all we can do is really kind of pray for peace, that the ambassador says all the time, pray for sanity, which he says all the time, and really just, hold that energy and just hope that as again, the ambassador says all the time, hope that the world leaders make the right choices and do the right things. And he, certainly tries to encourage them to do that. As many people are trying to do that. And what I'm going to do is just ask everyone to kind of give their, final comments. And I'll start with Sherry, if she's there. If you have any final comments or questions on this report today.
No, not really today. One of the things that maybe the ambassador can close with, one of the things we were discussing is how people like to live in an illusion world. And, this is all about waking up, all of us waking up and seeing what's going on out there and, really making a difference. And it is very true that thoughts become things, that we can certainly, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, we can certainly create the new paradigm that we're wishing to step into. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Sherry. And I'm going to go to Steve and see if you have some closing comments, Steve.
Yes, all I'd like to say is that I just wish this mess in Syria and the Middle East is cleaned up as quickly as possible. I don't care who does it. It just needs to be stopped. And I just wish for peace as well. That's all I want to say.
Radagast. My brother Radagast.
Well, yeah, I guess, things are changing really rapidly. And of course, with all the change, we're going to see the good stuff, and there's going to be, the holding on of the old paradigm. I mean, as I read through the news, I read that the United States just used helicopters to drop tons and tons of ammunition to the rebels. So, they seem to be wanting to keep the stupidity going. But I guess on a positive note, one of the Republican candidates, Ben Carson, did question fiat money and how when we left the domestic gold standard in 1933 and then the international gold standard in 1971, the dollar has just turned into trash since then. And of course, he was taken to task by whoever was interviewing him. But I mean, just that little conversation about how what is money, and Ben Carson said gold is money, and he was tying money to gold. So that's a conversation creeping into the mainstream that has not really been had before. And I think I mean, they might bury that, but I mean, there's cracks all over the artificial matrix, because I believe there's an organic matrix from God that is part of the original matrix. But I see cracks in the artificial one, and all these little stories coming out. I mean, it's really like there is no curtain to hide behind, and I don't like to blame it on wizards.
Let me just add that J.P. Morgan said that gold is money, everything else is credit.
Oh, that's good, Steve. Very good.
That's what it is.
Sanjay, did you have any closing comments you want to make?
Well, yeah, just regarding peace, basically, as I mean, Putin and China are doing something about it, and I'm glad to see Middle East is wanting peace, and Iraq is joining them and giving them permission, and Saudi Arabia is obviously looking at doing something. And I even saw a thing on Yemen that Russia is going to help them achieve peace. So, I mean, look, Australia, America, all our countries have been there for 10, 15 years, and it seems the place has gone bad. Let's just pray that Russia can do it, and let's support Russia, and let's get it done. We need peace and prosperity in the world for all, not just for some.
That's right, Zanj. Thank you. And let's see if the ambassador, I have a few announcements, but I want to wait and see if the ambassador has any closing comments that he'd like to make.
Yeah, my closing comment is, like I said, we need to stop living in Disneyland, okay? And we need to understand that this people has a PhD in deception, okay? And so we need to, examine all their statements over and over again. And it's a lot of people that is set out in the system to confuse people with RVs and bond redemptions and all this different type of nonsense and different form of transactions and so on like that. Be very careful. Be very, very careful. Okay. And I also wanted to state it's very important that when we hear news from our media as to question, and research it a few times, because most of the time it's just propaganda. And it's important to stay in the life, okay, and in the good standing with truth, okay. So always look at the facts and and the truth of the things, and not just claims that we are so many times saying, because inside the goldfish ball, humans very, very easily just tapping a little bit of a goldfish ball, they get all excited. But it's important to look at the great impact on humanity. And, we are fighting daily on setting the system back to the way that it should be. And we will overcome 555, okay? And I mean, overcome 666 with 555. And, it's just a question of time. And I want the people that listen to this to basically remit and surrender and do what's right for humanity and repurpose yourself into the new era. That's my recommendation. And with that, I would say God bless you all and thank you for joining another GoldFish Report.
Well, there's a few announcements I'd like to make. And the first one, we are this weekend, we do have available time for people to schedule present your project with the ambassador. So you can go to our website at www.cbcglobaleducation.com and you can register to present your humanitarian project. We did make some comments on a previous show about us being, we're allowed to have and set the rules for how we conduct our organization. And we're trying to do something to help humanity. And there's been some people who have been making comments that are inappropriate. And quite honestly, we do want to hear your comments, but if it's inappropriate, and we do reserve the right to make that decision and that judgment, they will be removed because it's not contributing. And the reason I'm saying that is because it really doesn't do anything to help humanity, because that's our goal. Our goal is to help humanity. And these comments are taking us away. We know that that's what some of the goals are to, like from trolls, is to take the focus away from the good that we're trying to do. So all I have to say is to ask yourself to look in the mirror. What are you doing for humanity? And making comments where you basically regurgitate on our site is not appropriate, and they will be removed. So, we are going to be doing a question-answer session with the ambassador each week, and we do welcome your questions. And please go to our website at www.globalmissionofpeace.com, and in the comment section or contact section, please feel free to submit your questions. You can also do that on the goldfishreport.com, or you can do that at cbcglobaleducation.com as well. And so submit questions that you may have. If you would like to participate and join us, and please, by all means, feel free to join us in our weekly symposium and ask the questions. If we don't select one of your questions, we can't select every question, but if we don't select your question, please feel free to join us and find out what we're about and come and ask the ambassador questions. That's why you join the symposium. You can do that. So you could do that by going to any of the websites I just mentioned, and I'll repost them again in the description section of this message. To join us, if you'd like to join us on the symposium, the link is there, and you can register there as well. So I do encourage people to do that. And if you do have an idea for a humanitarian project, you can, present your project. But by all means, if you're not sure how to write a business plan, register for our business plan workshop that will give you guidelines on how to do that. It's not going to hold your hand, but it's going, because you have to do the work for whatever industry that you may have an idea to do that in. But if it's about employing people, if it's about creating new ways of agriculture, new ways to sustain water, something that's going to have an impact on humanity, something where we're not just thinking about ourselves, but we're thinking about humanity. We're thinking about your community. You're thinking about people beyond yourself in your own immediate life. Those are the kinds of things, because the ambassador wants to know, what they really care about. It's not about the money. It's about what's in your heart, and it's about what we can do together and collectively. So by all means, we want to thank you for joining us today. We want to thank our subscribers. And with that, this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.